The Idries Shah Foundation podcast. Practical psychology for today. Featuring the works of Idries Shah, narrated by David Ault. Welcome to the Idries Shah Foundation podcast. On this edition of the podcast, we will hear selections from A Veiled Gazelle by Idries Shah. Introduction. And among the wondrous things is a veiled gazelle, a divine subtlety veiled by a state of the self, referring to the states of those who know. Unable to explain their perceptions to others, they can only indicate them to whoever has started to feel something similar. Muhyiddin ibn Arabi, the interpreter of desires. The veiled gazelles, or shrouded deer, dabiyun mubaka'un, referred to by Ibn Arabi, are the perceptions and experiences indicated by those who have them to those who have some inkling of them. Veiling in Sufi parlance indicates the action of the subjective or commanding self, which partly through indoctrination and partly through base aspirations prevents higher vision. Sufi poetry, literature, tales, and activities are the instruments which, when employed with insight and prescription rather than automatically or obsessively, help in a relationship between Sufi and pupil towards the removal of the veils. Idries Shah. Master of the Option. Three young men, each having heard of the great sanctity and wonders wrought by the Sufi master Kilidi, chanced to meet on their way to his dwelling place. Journeying together, they discussed what they knew of the path and its difficulties. "Sincerity towards your teacher is essential," said the first youth, "and I shall concentrate upon that, if I am accepted as a student, to exclude my own baser selfishness." "A sincerity," said the second, "of course means complete obedience, even when provoked to rebel, and I shall certainly abide by that. But obedience also means to avoid hypocrisy, desiring inwardly to disobey, and includes generosity without pride. That I will attempt." "Sincerity, avoiding base selfishness, obedience, detachment from hypocrisy, generosity," said the third, "these are essentials. But I have heard it said that if the disciple tries to graft these on top of his unaltered self, they merely become mechanical, mimes, even hiding objectionable characteristics which wait to manifest themselves. Surely the real disciple is he who is not just doing the opposite of what he feels is bad, nor carrying on a charade of goodness. They say that he is a seeker of truth who is master of the option, to do good or to do what has to be done." They all arrived eventually at the Sufi's house, and were allowed to attend some of his lectures and to take part in various spiritually strengthening exercises. One day the Sufi said to them, "Whether we are at home or on the road, we are all, always on a journey. But to give this illustrative effect, I shall now give you the chance of observing and taking part in one such expedition in a perceptible shape." After they had been on the road for some time, the first disciple said to the Sufi, "Travel is undoubtedly good, but my mind inclines to service, the Sufi station in which one can obtain understanding through working for others and for the truth." The Sufi answered, "Would you like to establish yourself in a cell at this crossroads and serve the people until such time as I call you to further studies?" The young man was delighted to have this opportunity of carrying out a task on his own, and the others left him there to attend to the needs of the wayfarer. Some time later, the second disciple said to the Sufi, "I yearn to turn back from my self-centeredness, so that my commanding self shall be able to exercise sincerity. I wish I could pause at this village and explain some of the respect which I have for you and for the path to the people here, who plainly have no comprehension of it." "If that is your wish, I shall grant it," said the Sufi. Leaving him there in a state of delight, the Sufi and his remaining disciple moved on. Some days later, these two came to a place where people were fighting about which of them should have a certain piece of land and farm it, and who should have another. The young man said to the Sufi, "How strange that they do not see that, by working together, they would all benefit far more. They should pool both their resources and their labor to achieve prosperity." "Now," said the Sufi, "you can see that you are the master of the option here. You can see alternatives that others cannot. Your option is to tell them or to pass by silently." "I do not want to tell them," said the youth, "since they might not listen to me and would probably all turn against me. So nothing would be gained, and I would only be diverted from my goal on the path." "Very well," said the Sufi, "I shall intervene." He approached the people, and by some means known only to himself, made them give up the land to him. He settled there, and after a few years, when he had taught everyone to share in the labor, he presented the land and its yield to them, and the two started again on their interrupted journey. They retraced their steps, and when they arrived at the place where they had left the second disciple, the third student noticed that this man did not recognize them. Their appearance had changed through years of work on the land, the effect of the sun, and their change of clothes. They even spoke, through long association with the villagers, in a somewhat different manner. To the second disciple, therefore, they were merely two villagers. The Sufi approached the second disciple and asked him to tell him something about the Sufi teacher who had left him there some years before. "Don't you talk to me about him," said his former disciple, "for he abandoned me here to make his fame known in the land, giving me to understand that he would return and teach me, and I have had no word of him for several years." And for some reason originating with the beyond, as soon as he had said these words, a number of villagers appeared and seized him. The newcomers asked their chief why they were acting in this way. "This man," said the villagers, "came here and preached about a great man of the spirit whose disciple he was. We took him in, and he became rich and successful in our village. We decided, 5 minutes ago, that he is a liar and a fraud, and we are taking him away to kill him." There was nothing that the two could do as the unfortunate man was hauled struggling away, although they tried. "You see," said the Sufi, "I have tried to protect him, but here I am not master of the option." The two journeyed on, until they came to the place where there sat the first disciple at the crossroads. He too did not recognize them. When they approached, the Sufi asked him where they might find some water to drink. The disciple answered, "I am thoroughly disillusioned with you travelers. I have been here for years trying to help the people, and all I got was betrayal. People are not worth serving. Even my master, who deserted me 3 years or more ago, is not prepared to serve me by coming back and giving me the teachings to which all men are surely entitled." No sooner were these words out of his mouth than a party of soldiers arrived and seized the man for forced labor. "We thought you were only a poor ascetic," said their captain, "but as we paused to watch you, we noticed by your belligerent air and violent actions as you gesticulated that you were strong enough to do some service for the state." In spite of the Sufi and his disciple remonstrating with them, the soldiers carried the first disciple off. "I am not master of the option here, as you can see," said the Sufi to the third disciple. In this way did Khalidi show the only disciple who had the patience to understand that the understanding of events and their action are interrelated, and that how a person behaves inwardly and outwardly will determine his progress just as much as anything done by anyone else. He asked the disciple, "If you were asked what you have learnt, how would you put it?" The young man said, "People look at things in isolation, imagining that if they do what they want to do, they will surely get what they want. Further, their good brings harvests, and their bad brings harvests, and none can stand in the way of one's harvest. And I have learned that on the path all are entwined, people, places, events, and actions. Finally, I have learned that while someone's bad thoughts and actions may remove all his hopes of progress, there is yet a merciful dispensation. For have I myself not been allowed to continue learning in spite of my refusal to exercise the option when I was master of it?" At that moment there was a rushing sound, and the third disciple became aware of the truth of the greater understanding. And as this was happening, the Sufi teacher Khalidi disappeared, never to be seen again. He walked the remainder of the way to the house of the teacher, where a large number of dervishes were waiting, and as he entered it, he placed Khalidi's prayer carpet, which he had picked up, on the master's chair. The watching dervishes raised a great shout of welcome, and their leader approached the third disciple. "Master," he said, "we have been waiting here under a vow of secrecy for over 3 years, since the great Sheikh Khalidi left us saying that he was returning to the skies, and that whoever should bring back his prayer carpet would be his successor." Now this dervish was heavily veiled with the end of his turban. As he handed over the establishment to the third disciple, now the master, and prepared to go on his own travels, the cloth momentarily moved aside from his features, and the new Sufi teacher saw the face of Khalidi smiling before him. Four Friends. Once upon a time there was a Sufi who had decided to take up his abode in a certain city, where he was to establish his school. There were 3 men there who knew his work, and who had written to him expressing their desire to be of help to him in any way he wished. Accordingly, he visited them one by one. The first was one of the best-known scholars of the region, who said to him, "You are more than welcome, and I would like to be of any service to you and your work, and of course I also want to study under you." The Sufi thanked him and said, "I would indeed like to teach you, but first of all we have preparatory work to do. A house cannot be lived in until it is built." "Command me," said the scholar. The Sufi continued, "Supposing that I become a person who is much discussed in this city, I would like you to become my critic, using your scholarly capacities, within reasonable limits, to put the logical case against my work in an adequate and rational manner." "This is indeed a strange request," said the scholar, "far from the familiar methods of the ordinary thinker. But I have promised to serve you, and I shall attempt to do what you ask." The Sufi left him and went to see the second man, who was an influential and literate lawyer, also much respected in the area. The lawyer also expressed a wish to be of help and to be a disciple, and the Sufi said, "I would much like you to study under me, but first I will accept your offer to help in whatever way you can. I ask you to do the following. If and when you hear that I am being discussed in this city, you are to defend my name and work in as reasonable manner as you can, so that I have a logical and cool-headed supporter." "I would be glad to act in this capacity," said the merchant, "though I certainly did not realize that people of probity were ever in need of arranged support." Finally, the Sufi presented himself at the court of the third man, who happened to be the governor of the city. The governor expressed the desire to be a pupil and to be of any possible service to the Sufi, whom he respected so much, and the Sufi thanked him and put this proposal. "I would be glad to accept you as a pupil, but first of all I need you to act in a certain manner, so that things may proceed in accordance with their best potentiality. First, I would like you to employ me in a reasonably honourable capacity, within my capabilities, and so long as I discharge whatever responsibilities you give me adequately. But you should also, from time to time, in public, reproach or threaten me in such a way as to make it appear that I have no sinecure. The governor agreed to do this, remarking only that he was surprised that anyone would wish to be subjected to such a show of insecurity. The years passed, and in due time the Sufi gained many disciples and established his own business interests which supported him adequately. In the meantime, he had, of course, become well known, and the scholar had expressed the arguments against his teachings, while the lawyer also played his part in putting the other side of the case. Finally, on the day when he was able to leave the service of the governor, the Sufi called the 3 other men to his house, and, setting a meal before them, informed them all that he was now ready to accept them all as disciples. "While it is of course the prerogative of the master to teach in whatever way he finds the best," said the scholar, "I would like to know why you asked one of us to support you, another to oppose you, and the third to threaten you." The Sufi said, "I am perfectly ready to enlighten you as to the reason for your various tasks. First, bear in mind that the outward must be firm before the inward can be made firm, and that those of you who were first in accepting me are last in being accepted into the teaching only because you will need the least actual time in your studies. I asked you, the scholar, to put the case against me, so that, when the inevitable opposition arose, people, instead of mounting an ill-considered campaign against the way, would leave it to whoever was already adequately representing this point of view. Who better than the logician best able to express all aspects of a case? But since there are always people who are influenced by inimical propaganda, it was necessary that the other side of the matter should be advocated. For this role I chose a respected lawyer, who has also a wide culture, to whom people would listen as much as they would to the scholar. Like a sponge absorbing surplus water, your mutual action was able to take up the excess controversy, which, as always, is rooted in the desire of people to discuss. The argument was therefore safely contained in this manner, and the desires for discussion, which exists as a force in itself, were given appropriate expression. Since neither of you stood to gain repute by his victory, the debate was in the hands of people who would not twist it to personal ends. The desire to have a suitable post in the administration of this city was both because of the tradition of our way that those who pursue it should be gainfully employed, and also so that I could contribute towards the good of the people, while being a person of adequate status in their eyes, something which a knowledge of their mentality makes necessary. The need to be threatened was based on the fact that in all administrative systems, there are people who seek to bribe, suborn, or undermine public officials. If my position were thought to be insecure, these people would tend to leave me alone, counting on the likelihood that I would, in any case, be dismissed before long. Such people's plotting, too, would come to the ears of the governor, my employer, when they tried to influence him further against me, thus exposing their inner characteristics to him, enabling him to take any necessary action. In addition, any plotting which they did amongst themselves seeking my downfall and their promotion would divert their energies and not secretly afflict the state. We live in a world where people are quite unaware of the sources of their actions, and the human community is therefore influenced by unreasoning factors. To enlist them in a pattern of defense, which shall help those who are trying to achieve good, is at least as useful as searching them out and cutting them down, only to allow further weeds of a similar sort to grow up and to have to attack them again. Choosing the latter path, we would never make progress, but only at best remain where we were, clearing weeds and waiting for more to be cleared. Under such circumstances, how could a people make any progress towards the true destiny of man? When Bad is Good, The Legend of Aseely. There was a man, a simple workman named Aseely, who had been prevailed upon to lend some money, all his savings of 100 pieces of silver, to a wicked trader who promised to invest it and make him a profit on some commercial transaction. When, however, Aseely went to the merchant to see what news there was of his investment, he said, "Aseely, never heard of you. Money? I have had none of it. Begone, unless you want me to call the police and charge you with demanding money by means of threats." Since this workman was unversed in the ways of the world, and had not asked for a receipt or taken care to have witnesses to the matter, he went back to his hut, realizing that there was nothing which he could do. That evening he decided to pray. Going out on the roof of his hovel, he raised his hands towards the sky and said, "O God, I pray for justice, so that I may receive back my money which I need at this time, whatever the means which can be employed, for I have no ordinary path open to me." As it happened, a certain villainous-looking dervish who was passing heard this prayer. As soon as Aseely had finished, the dervish approached him and said, "I will help you, for everything needs a vehicle, and perhaps your chance of an answer to your supplication comes through me." Aseely at first shrank from the man, as one who had the reputation of being afflicted with the evil eye, and Aseely had enough troubles already. "You may be interested to know, though you may not believe it," continued the dervish, "that although people hate me, I do good, just as many of those whom people love do evil. I will take up your case." So saying, the dervish went on his way. Not long afterwards, Aseely was standing near the trader's shop, wondering if there was anything he could do about his money, when the dervish strode into view and cried out, "Ah, friend Aseely, my old friend, come to my house this very evening, for I have at last decided to explain some of my secrets to you, and you will know valuable things that I know, and your life will not be the same after that." Aseely did not even know where the dervish's house was, much less that he was to be selected to receive important secrets. He still felt nervous about the dervish's reputation as an evil man. The trader, however, who had been attracted from his shop by the noise, was also terrified of the dervish's evil eye, and the knowledge that Aseely was the disciple of this man threw him into panic. That evening, while he was sitting at home, Aseely found the dervish at his door. "Well," he said, "how much did the trader give you?" "He gave me 5 times what he had taken, and denied that he had," said Aseely, still rather mystified. "Well," said the dervish, "remember that there are many things which are supposed to work through the power of good, but which are in fact based on bad things. There are, similarly, many things thought to work by the power of badness, but in reality these are sometimes good things. A bad man like your trader would not have listened to the admonition of a good man, but bring into play the supposed threat of someone even worse than him, and he is powerless against it. Truly the sages have said, 'Good cannot come out of bad, but you have to be sure that it really is bad before you make your clever judgments.'" Too Good to Miss. There are groups of performers who call themselves dervishes who specialize in eating poisonous snakes, stabbing themselves with sharp knives, and swallowing red-hot coals. They claim that these activities, which have been observed and even filmed by researchers, prove that they are at least partly in another dimension, hence their physical body cannot be harmed by them. One day, so the story goes, a man who wanted to enter the same ethereal realms came upon a band of these performers, who were swallowing live coals with every evidence of enjoyment and breathing out smoke and steam. Carefully copying exactly what they did, the newcomer picked up a handful of coals and gulped them down, without any harm and without feeling anything. One of the dervishes caught him by the arm. "Why did you do that?" "To participate in the sublime ritual." "Yes, but why didn't you breathe out the smoke? That's the very best part." What not to do. The learning function among the Sufis is sharply distinguished from the entertainment or emotional stimulus function, something which is seldom understood by outside observers, or, for that matter, by people who want to be stimulated and not to experience any developmental activity. This story seeks to illustrate the point. A would-be dervish saw a woman grooming a beautiful and well-kept donkey by a roadside and stopped to admire it. "What are you doing?" he asked her. "Taking my donkey into town. I always take him with me to market." "What is he like to ride?" asked the traveller. "Oh, I never ride him," said the woman. "In that case, why not let me buy the animal?" She sold it to him, and he led it away. The following week, the woman saw him sitting in a corner of the marketplace. "How is the donkey getting on?" she asked. "The donkey? It kicks. It throws me off its back. It refuses anything but the finest food. It's hopeless." "Ah," said the woman, "you must have been trying to ride on him." This audio is made available by the Idries Shah Foundation and is copyright 2019. All rights reserved.